I find a lot of times people think brand is a logo.
Yes.
And it is absolutely not a logo. Or in companies where somebody has taken over a company or inherited a company, they want to change the name immediately. And I go to them much like John does and say, why? Because really, first off, you probably have equity in the market around the name that you have today. But secondly, I've said to a client, the name of your company really doesn't matter if it's not attached to a brand, right? The name of your company could be Chuck. It's really the experience that people have with your company. So I put the brakes pretty quickly on somebody that starts to talk about brand without a real complete understanding of what that is.
A brand is the promise that you make to your customers and how you deliver on that promise in a very short way. And then it's all the representations that go with that.
And I would add, a brand is how your customers experience you.
Agreed.
And oftentimes, one of the conversations that I'm having inside organizations is that every interaction that a customer has with your company is a part of the customer experience and the brand. So you could have a great front-end experience where they've touched your website or they've touched social in some way. They've had a great experience with your sales organization. They've had a great experience with your delivery organization. And then some crabby person out of accounting hits them up and just blows the whole experience. So every single touch point in an organization is a representation of the brand and part of the customer experience.
Which is why you have to hire, fire, compensate, and promote based on the values of your company, which are a big piece of your brand. Because that cultural element will keep you from hiring that crabby person in accounting, essentially.
And I would say, I encourage people to cut that cancer out of their organization very quickly, even high performers.
Yes.
Because you will ultimately make more money letting that person go than you would destroying your culture inside your organization for one bad egg.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite topics, how marketing and sales should be integrated. And in smaller companies and mid-sized companies like the ones where John and I work, it should be much easier. And it often is not still. Which is kind of funny.
Right. And then when you scale, it just gets worse.
Yes, right. And when they get sales enablement organizations and don't even understand what that is, it gets even worse. But one of the directives that I give to marketing inside of an organization that I'm working with is, number one, you need to understand the sales process, right? So we work very hard to help organizations have a very defined sales process, built out playbooks so that we are getting the best result as often as possible. One of the directives that I give to the marketing organization is, once that you've understood the sales process, I need you to show us exactly where your assets that you're building are going to fit into that process and how they support the sales process. So oftentimes I put the assets in the sales process. We list not just what's happening in the process, we list what marketing assets are going to be an added value for a salesperson at that part of the process. What should I pull the trigger on? And we actually put training as a part of the process. What are the skills that we need to train salespeople for? I think sometimes, and I mean this in the most loving way, John, I think sometimes marketing organizations inside companies are like lawyers that get billed by the word, right? And they feel like the value that they add is based on the amount of stuff that they produce. But if I can't show a salesperson where this fits in the process, how it's going to help move the sale to the next level, then the asset has no purpose.
And to Jane's point, so historically, most of us in marketing come out of the creative in some way. I mean, I started my career as a writer. We've got graphic designers and we've got all these creative people who, that's what we want to do, right? Like, we want to make stuff. But, rather than creating in mass volume, is being very targeted. Like, this piece is designed to be, this is an emailed piece designed after a conversation about this topic. That's when you use this asset. Another place that we do is we do a lot of account-based marketing where, we are helping sales teams do very hyper-targeted, like big sales, right? They're elephant hunting. And we're providing very, very small, specific, targeted pieces of content to help hunt those elephants. It's bait, right? It's elephant bait. But rather than creating in volume, we just create for the target. Your brand is a story, right? I mean, it's the story of how, your brand is a story, right? I mean, it's the story of how, of how you're going to deliver what you promise to the customer, and then what experience they're going to have. And telling that story is very valuable because the human mind works that way. So story starts with brand because your brand is the beginning of the story of how you're going to deliver on the promise you've made to your customer. And then the experience that they're going to have with that brand. And the human mind works that way. We as people react better to a story than we do data.
Built into them to kind of echo and add to John's point, what I say to salespeople all the time is clients do not buy on facts and data. Clients buy on emotion. They support their decision with facts and data, but they will never make a decision to buy your product or service based on the facts and data that you've got in your PowerPoint presentation. And that's why we pepper it often with stories.
And let me just slide that into the B2B world a little bit, because a lot of B2B folks think that, well, no, businesses buy. What are businesses made of? Businesses are made of people, and those people still buy on an emotional level. And it doesn't matter whether they're buying pencils and office supplies or they're buying, software that's going to run the business. There's always an emotional capacity tied to that, no matter what the data show. The other thing is just the brand is just being consistent. Is you illustrate a consistent customer experience over and over and over again with a success story at the end, and that's hugely powerful. And supported by data eventually.
So John and I have hit on the fact that strategy impacts the products that you sell, the customer experience you want to have, what your brand should look like, what the story is, how people should experience you, but it also is going to impact the mix of those products. How do you determine which products or services you want to sell more of, which do you want to sell less of? How do you structure your organization to support those outcomes for the customer? When do you hire new people? What are the resources you need? I mean, it impacts every decision in your organization.